This video is an overview of the new Marantz Model 60N network audio integrated amplifier. Ever since 1952, when Saul Marantz sold his first piece of gear, Marantz has been known for making audio equipment that has a very sweet musical sound. Music lovers and audiophiles have loved their sound over the past 7 decades. Now, the Marantz look and sound have also been cherished for over multiple generations, with vintage Marantz gear continuing to increase in value over time. Now, a few years ago, Marantz decided to create a new series that harkened back to the classic 1970 Marantz Model 30 integrated amplifier design and engineered by Saul Marantz himself. This would normally have been quite a tall task, but Marantz had a secret weapon called the Marantz Sound Master. After Saul Marantz retired, the owners of Marantz were very clever to start training young engineers on how to identify that classic Marantz sound. Now, these Marantz Sound Masters spend their time listening to engineering prototypes to make sure they have the sound music lovers expect from Marantz pieces. Now, the first two 30 pieces of gear had the look, feel, sound, and build quality that Marantz was famous for, and when we first tested them back in 2020, we were pretty impressed. Now, Marantz followed up with more models in this series, but we have been waiting for a more affordable model to show up that would appeal to a wider audience. The Model 60N is just what many music lovers have been looking for: a fairly affordable integrated amplifier with network streaming and analog inputs to be the centerpiece of a great music system. Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at all of the great features of the new Model 60N, then we'll get into how we felt it stood up in some listening tests. Finally, I'm going to go over why you might want to choose this one over the less expensive Marantz M1, or step up to the Model 40, which is the model above the 60N. Now, we do have reviews of both of those models, so you can check them out in the links in the description below. Now, when we first took this Model 60N out of the box, we were really surprised at just how much it weighed for its relatively modest price in the world of high-end integrated amplifiers with streaming. This guy weighs in at almost 29 pounds, which immediately tells us it has a pretty massive power supply and some serious build quality. Now, the outer appearance is just what you'd expect from models in this lineup. The early Marantz integrated amps had a very symmetrical look with a mirror image layout of the controls on the right and left side. Many of the original Marantz pieces also sported a round porthole-like meter in the center of the unit, which is also present on the Model 60N for display functions. And just like the other models in this series, the 60N will be available in a black or silver gold finish, although I have to say I am a little partial to that silver gold finish, as it just looks a lot like that classic Marantz integrated amp from over 50 plus years ago. I also love the look of the raised front panel sitting on top of what looks like a carbon fiber body. But of course, good looks are only part of the story, and you'll also want great sound and features in a piece that will become the heart of your 2-channel audio system. Alright, taking a look at the features, there's really not much lacking in this 60N. You'll find 3 analog inputs plus a moving magnet phono input. Now, there is a preamp output should you wish to add more power later with a separate amplifier, and a mono subwoofer output. Digital inputs include optical, coax, HDMI ARC, and USB-A. These are high-res audio capable of up to 24-bit 192K and 11.2 MHz DSD. And with all of this, you also get network streaming via the HEOS ecosystem. Now, HEOS was developed a few years ago by Denon, a sister company of Marantz. It has a pretty big variety of music services on board and is also compatible with AirPlay 2, so if your favorite service is missing, you can easily just use AirPlay 2. Bluetooth, receive, and transmit are built in as well. These connections will allow you to have a turntable, CD player, 2 more analog sources, and probably more digital sources than anyone would ever have. And I especially appreciate that they added an HDMI ARC input for TV audio. Now, this means your TV remote on a compatible TV will be able to control the volume of this Model 60N. And if you are new to the world of separate audio components and all of this sounds a little daunting, know that the experts here at Audio Advice have your back. Should you have any technical questions relating to the setup of your 60N, or any gear for that matter that you purchased from Audio Advice, we are here to help you with real live people who live and breathe performance audio and home theater. You can always call or chat with us at audioadvice.com or stop by one of our award-winning showrooms. Okay, when I first saw this feature-rich set of inputs, I wondered where they cut corners to produce the 60N for such an affordable price. Well, it appears that they really just didn't. I expected to see a standard power supply, but the Model 60N has a large toroidal power transformer. The internal layout is also a more costly design with sensitive audio components well isolated from the power supply and extruded aluminum heat sinks for the output transistors. The amplifier section is a Class AB current feedback with push-pull design rated at 60 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 80 watts per channel into 4 ohms. Now, seeing all of this, I then wondered if Marantz had used a less expensive version of their famous HDMI circuitry in this 60N. Again, the answer is no, they did not, and they used their HDMI SA2, HDMI SA3 technology. Now, HDMI stands for Hyperdynamic Amplifier Module. Many years ago, the Marantz engineers became disappointed with off-the-shelf op-amp circuits that evolved to be more cost-effective but worse sounding. So they developed their own discrete audio circuitry with hand-selected components to deliver the best sound. Now, the Marantz Soundmasters and their ears played a big role in the product selection, and Marantz has used their HDMI tech in the better gear ever since. So it would seem Marantz has knocked the ball out of the park with this new Model 60N, but I did have one nitpick with the subwoofer out. Unlike the 40N and M1 streaming amps that are above and below the 60N in terms of price, the subwoofer crossover is fixed at 150 Hz on the 60N instead of being variable like the other two models. Now, I think they probably did this to keep it completely analog for vinyl enthusiasts who prefer a pure analog amplifier, as having variable crossover at this price point is not practical to do in the analog domain. But for those of us who plan to use mostly digital sources, it would have been nice to have a way to vary the subwoofer output. But honestly, that's really the only thing I could nitpick and fault the 60N on, as it just packs in a whole lot of great Marantz tech, and the build quality is great for its price. Now, I set the 60N up in our audio test lab in a couple different rooms to really get a good feel for how it sounded. Now, I used a few different speakers to test the Marantz Model 60N, but a lot of the times I was using the latest Bowers & Wilkins 606 bookshelf speakers that you can see right behind me. And I have to say, the warmth and musical sound, especially in songs like Don't Know Why by Norah Jones or Lay Me Down by Crosby & Nash, it just really came across in their voices and sounded outstanding for an integrated amp in this price class. Now, like I said, we've also reviewed the newer Marantz M1 streaming amp and the Model 40N, which are $500 less for the M1 and $1,000 more for the 40N at the time that we filmed this video. I thought it would be helpful for those of you considering the Model 60N to look at what you get from each of these models in comparison. Now, to start, I was pretty impressed with all that the M1 offered for the price. It had a lot of great features and sounded pretty darn good. If you plan to use your digital centerpiece mostly for enhanced TV sound from a pair of stereo speakers and or subwoofer, the M1 is a really good choice, as it also has night mode and dialogue enhancement, which are not on the Model 60N. And it's got selectable crossovers for the subwoofer, which is pretty nice. But as good as this made in Japan small streaming amplifier is in the M1, the Model 60N is just a whole other realm from a sonic standpoint. And that is to be expected, as the M1 is made to be tucked away and weighs in at just under 5 pounds, while the 60N has over 6 times as much heft with its much more massive amplifier section. There really isn't anywhere in an audio comparison the M1 sounds better than the 60N. Now, the HDMI circuitry in the 60N and its far better amplifier components make it no contest. So if you have the space and the budget for the 60N, I think it's well worth the extra $500, plus it also just looks really cool. Alright, now the Model 40N, which came out in 2022, is a more interesting comparison. At first glance to us, they looked far too similar to justify the extra cost for the 40N. That is until we dug into things a little deeper. There's an 8-pound weight difference in the two models, which is attributed to the power supply and chassis. Now, you'll get a bigger toroidal power transformer in the 40N, and the chassis itself is much more sophisticated with more layers and over twice the thickness of the 60N. The output transistors sit on copper plates in the 40N as well. Now, Marantz spent more time hand selecting the components in the HDMI circuitry in the 40N, which also gives it an edge. The 40N also has Marantz musical digital filtering, which is not present in the 60N either. Plus, you get variable crossovers for the sub out. And if it matters to you, the 40N is made at the Marantz factory in Shirakawa, Japan, while the 60N is manufactured in Vietnam. Now, while it is only rated at 10 more watts per channel more than the 60N, the 40N just sounds more dynamic and can control harder to drive speakers much better. But with all that said, the 60N is one heck of a great value. If you have harder to drive speakers or a larger room, you should seriously consider the 40N if it's within your budget, but the difference in sound between the 40N and 60N is not as great as between the M1 and 60N. Okay, I hope that this overview of the 60N in comparison with a couple of other great Marantz models has been helpful in your search for better sound. The 60N is probably one of the best value products that we've seen in the Marantz series, and we see it fitting into a whole lot of different systems. Now, if you do have more questions that we didn't answer here, call or chat with our team of experts at audioadvice.com. Plus, when you purchase from Audio Advice, you get free shipping, lifetime support, and a price guarantee. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on any of our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.